We know that people are currently logging on, so we're going to give a minute just for that as we see those numbers still increasing. So we'll get started in just a minute. As people are logging on, just want to give a few quick announcements. We are recording this session and we will make this recording available afterwards for folks who are not able to participate today. Also, you should be able to view the captions. It is an automatic system, so please forgive any errors that may occur. The captioning is available for this session. Again, welcome to the Policy, Equity, and Practice Information session for a new project that Complete College America is launching. We are excited to have you here where you can learn more and hopefully apply. While you're getting set, always know, Complete College America, we are engaged in social media, so you can find us here on the screen. You see our handles for Facebook, for Twitter, and for LinkedIn. As members of the Complete College America Alliance, you are Complete College America, so be sure to engage with us as well as the larger whole of higher education. If you haven't already done so, please be sure to log into completecollege.org. When you have a profile that way, you can be kept informed about the latest announcements, whether it's new projects and new grants that we're releasing, information on toolkits, our podcasts, our webinars, our resources, lots of great things at completecollege.org. And with that, we are going to get started. My name is Brandon Protas. I am a strategy director here at Complete College America. And today's session is about our Policy, Equity, and Practice initiative. This is a new project we're really excited about in conjunction with the Ascendium Education Group. If you notice PEP, it's PEP. So welcome to our first PEP rally. You are part of it. Here's what we're going to do. So today we're going to have some opening remarks and some overviews about Complete College America. I'm going to talk specifically about the PEP initiative, how we're putting this together, what our goals are, and then leave time for Q&A at the end. This is a webinar style, so you should be able to type in your questions, I guess, or your answers in the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen with the Zoom. And with no further ado, I would like to introduce the Vice President for Alliance Engagement and Institutional Transformation here at Complete College America, Dr. Nia Heidel.
All right there. Good afternoon, everyone. I can't tell you how excited I am that you're joining us this afternoon. We know that time is valuable, and so we appreciate the fact that you have allocated this afternoon, like this hour with us to learn more about this project. That's really, really exciting. CCA has been working diligently for the last 12 years to try to work on decreasing equity gaps and building capacity across institutions and systems to be able to support students in their completion journey. So we're committed to working with institutions to improve college completion. And we know that many of you, all of you, are working to serve our most vulnerable students who have been left out of some of our completion efforts. So this project that we have is really, really exciting because it's going to allow us to work with 3 different partners around some amazing ideas to improve equity and policy and practice. So let's just remind you about who CCA is. So you've heard us talk about the fact that CCA, we are bold advocates. We make no apologies for this. We are dedicated and committed to making sure that we are decreasing or closing institutional performance gaps. So we made an intentional effort to change the language from achievement gaps to institutional performance gaps, because we want to focus on the structural barriers that exist that are hindering students from being able to accomplish their goals. So we're looking at structural reforms and how do we promote policies to make sure that the efforts that we put into place are actually sustainable. So we have 48 members in our alliance. So this is really important. We just welcomed South Carolina last week. So yeah, a couple of weeks ago. So yay, South Carolina. And this is 39 states and then 9 consortia and regions. And the strength of the alliance and the benefits of being an alliance is that we are able to share information and learnings and resources across communities and systems. And so this is really beneficial because we don't have to continue to recreate things, right? So we can look to see who is like us and doing things that are similar to the things that we need and be able to optimize on those opportunities and those resources. The issues are not different. So we know that students, are sometimes making decisions based on misinformation. We know that advising and maps and degree plans are not always clear. We know that students have difficulty in registration. We have too many credits. We have lots of debt and no degrees. All these things exist. And so what CCA has been committed to doing is identifying what these big issues are and then working to eliminate these barriers for students and working with institutions, systems, and states to be able to identify what's going to work best in your system and your circumstance to be able to address some of these big issues. So the way we do this work is, like I said, the CCA Alliance is our strength. Getting together, convening. We haven't been able to do that for the last couple of years, but it's back. So we'll be convening in the spring. We're very excited about that. And then this summer, we're planning to have a policy institute to bring people together to share learnings, to be able to work together on policies and practices that we know are going to move the needle around college completion. And so we do this looking at policy, perspective, and practice. And so what are the conditions that exist? What are the things that we are doing? How do we solidify these activities in policy so that they become sustainable with the goal of increasing college completion? Because ultimately we're looking to provide increased economic opportunities, social mobility, and racial justice for the students who are participating in post-secondary education. So this work is grounded in our values. And so these things have not changed. We believe in data-informed decisions because we know as practitioners and faculty and professionals that we know what students are experiencing because we've had conversations with them, because we've sat with them and we talked to them and their families, but we need the data to be able to drive how we make decisions so that we can make sure that we're creating equitable structures and producing outcomes that are equitable for all of the students in our systems and in our states. So we're looking at how do we create collaboration across the states, across the alliance, and then how do we implement at scale? So if something is working really well, how do we take that and translate it into something that can be sustainable? And then when it comes to students and institutions, we are of the belief that we need to focus on having institutions that are ready for students and not students who are ready for institutions. So how do we do that? How do we center our work and our policies and our practices to make sure that students are always the central part of what we are doing? So we have we shared this last fall, the reorganization of our strategy. So working around 4 different pillars. And this is the way that we see that students are traveling through their higher education experience. So what is the purpose of them being there? Are they clear on how what they aspire to be aligns with their academic choice? How are we having conversations with them so they understand what is necessary in this journey? How are we onboarding them to make sure that they're adequately prepared? When it comes to structure, what are the things that we have in place that make students understand clearly where it is that they are trying to go? So do we have their degree plans clearly outlined so that they can know that in my first semester I'm doing this, and if I do all these things, I can graduate in this amount of time? Do we have schedules that really work for students? And so do we have schedules that are flexible? Maybe, with COVID, we've learned a lot about hybrid and online education. And we've seen in some instances that this has been extremely beneficial for individuals like working adults and parents who before struggled a little bit with trying to get to standard Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 o'clock classes. So how are we looking at those things and the lessons that we've learned from COVID to be able to provide schedules that make sense for our students? And then stackable credentials and certificates. So are there opportunities where they can earn credentials along the way? So if life happens and they have to stop out, that there's an opportunity for them to have increased economic mobility or social mobility in the process until they're able to continue. Then momentum. What are the ways that we get students on a good path and in a good rhythm to be able to graduate? So are we looking at how we're onboarding them? Are we putting them in co-requisite support versus remedial education? Do we have equitable processes and relationships with our K-12 system so that we can make sure that dual enrollment is available for all of our students and not just some? Are we talking to them about what does it take to graduate in the time that you think is going to work best for you? So 15 to finish, we know that if they want to graduate in 4 years, the only way to do that is 30 credit hours a year. But have we articulated that to students? And if their plan is a 5-year plan, then that's fine. So how are we helping them to map that out so still that they're able to stay on track within what their goals and their lives will allow? And then support. All these other things can be in place, but if we're not paying attention to how we're advising and coaching students, if we're not paying attention to things such as housing and food insecurity and providing academic support, it doesn't matter if we have the best laid plans, because students are more than just what they in the classroom. They need to have all these other things being supported as well in order for them to adequately be able to move through their degree plans. So we have a lot of the information that I just talked about around our strategies is actually on our website. And so we have been working really hard to develop toolkits and webinars and podcasts around some of these things. And as Brandon had mentioned before, we would like for you to create a profile. And so then you have access to some of these things that we have, all of these things that we've created. And again, this is the benefit of being in an alliance, right? So that you have access to these things, and maybe some of these things will be useful to you as you're moving forward. So when we look at when we look at where in 2021 and 2022, so we have the same focus, the same goals that we've always had, right? And so what we're focusing on right now is how do we just build a movement and then help institutions to be able to move into, like, to transform. So looking at what our unique roles are, how the landscape has changed, and then what is your equity agenda? So looking at what we did in the past, and then what tweaks do we need to make in order to be able to reach the students who have not been included or reached before, and then to really satisfy those gaps that exist within our student population. And so now I'm going to hand off to Dr. Protis.
Hi, thank you. Sorry about that. We just had a quick technical glitch. So I appreciate that, Nia. For those of you who don't know me, I am Brandon Protis, and I am a strategy director here at Complete College America. I know what you're really interested in is finding out more about this specific project. And so let me give you an overview of it, but you're going to see really quickly how everything that Nia talked about in terms of Complete College America's theory of change, how we operate, how we work at the scale level, goes directly into this grant, which is why we're so excited about this new PEP initiative and you being part of this first PEP rally. So as Nia mentioned, as you saw on the information page on the Complete College America website, we are going to be selecting 3 states or regions, because we do work with consortia. And that's going to be the focus of our work. Once we've identified those states or regions, we will work with them because they're going to be choosing a number of institutions that are going to be part of this project. One of the things that we know is for change to happen at a meaningful full and sustained way. It needs to include both of the institutions themselves. It needs to include the strategies, the implementation of those. It also includes the policy and the executive leadership. So that's why we're looking primarily at that focus of change at the state level, that we will also bring in the institutional teams. Now, at that state or system or regional level, the reason for that is policy, equity, and practice. Well, policy is one of the first parts that you hear about with this grant. Is we know strategies that work, but we also know that for those to happen at scale, for it to be unambiguous, for it to be clear what the vision of that level of change is, so that change doesn't happen in different ways across different institutions with different large variations. We know that policy is a prime factor in that. We know it takes a grass tops and a grassroots approach for change. Well, that grass tops approach comes through policy. So one of the overviews is in the time of this grant, and it'll be a 3-year project, we will be working with individual states to do an audit of, interrogate, and either develop new or make refinements to existing policy to focus on college completion, student success, with a laser focus on equity. So that's the grass tops, but I also mentioned we use a grassroots approach, and that's the implementing of the strategies. And so we're going to work with the states, and then we will work with the institutions to decide what is going to be the area of focus. We have a number of strategies, those are divided into the pillars, but what are the strategies that will have the maximum impact for increasing dramatically the college completion rates and reducing and eliminating institutional performance gaps, again, the term that we use instead of achievement or equity gaps, so that all groups, particularly racially minoritized students, are achieving at the same levels, which are the goals for your state or region. Now we're going to do this through the FIT model. That's something that Complete College America developed. FIT stands for Foundations for Institutional Transformation. It's built off of the work of John Cotter, and it looks at the change process through starting with creating that sense of urgency, to building the teams, and then moving on to the strategies themselves. Well, we know that there's various levels of that, different stakeholders. So what we mean by this is that there will be meetings that will involve the project leads, the executive leadership at the state level. We will also be doing some convenings with the institutional leads. So whether that's the presidents or the provosts, the leadership within the colleges and universities that will be implementing the strategies. We'll also be doing some action summits and planning academies with the teams themselves. So moving from the leadership to the folks who will be doing this work on their campuses themselves. We know, and I'm not sure where we are with the pandemic. I'm not sure we're quite post-pandemic. I'm not sure we're at the beginning, but one of the things that we've learned is that those convenings are vitally important. And some of those need to happen in person, and some of those will happen online in a remote environment. We will work with the states that are selected to find the model that fits best for convening folks from across the state, but making sure that the work can get done. And then the other overview piece that I want to highlight is we are going to be forming communities of practice. So you're going to be hearing soon as Alliance members about a new way and a new portal that CCA is going to be doing to connect people for active projects and for Alliance teams. Well, we're going to be creating these communities of practice, both within the states that are focused on those specific strategies and across the states or regions that are selected. So those goals, and you'll hear a little bit of a repeat from the overview, is by the end of this project, the 3 years, we want those states or regions to have developed those project and action plans to advance those key policies and practices. That means implementing the evidence-based strategies, the strategies that we know make a significant difference in student success. Those are going to be connected to the pillars that Nia shared earlier, and I will share again in just a second. We want to make sure that policy is a piece of this. Again, grass tops and grassroots. It's a combination of making sure policies are in place as well as the strategies. So we will elevate those system and state level policies to ensure that it's focused on scale change, equity focus, to make a difference in students. We're also going to be looking at data. As you heard, data is one of our core values. We're going to be prioritizing the key performance indicators focused on equity, not just the lagging indicators, but the leading indicators, to be able to monitor the progress, to inform that action. It's not data for data's sake or just to submit for compliance. It's data for continuous improvement and data to guide the actions within the state, region, and the institutions. As I mentioned before, we're going to be building these communities of practice. And that is not just during the time of the project itself, but what we want to do is develop these robust communities of practice that continue beyond. And that will be done both in person and through online environments. So I want to go back to the strategies. As Nia went through them one at a time, I'm sure there's a question, well, what do you mean by you're going to be building projects around the strategies? Well, simply put, this is where CCA, Complete College America, is working with our Alliance teams and those who are going to be selected to find what's going to be best for your context of your state or your system or your region. We know that for change to happen, it has to be meaningful and it has to make sense within where you are. So what we want to do is we want you, as you build out your application, we want you to be thoughtful, not around what does CCA want, what is the magic answer, but rather what is going to be the most useful in your state. So for example, you might decide you want to choose one strategy from each of the 4 pillars to be able to connect those because that's what's going to make the most difference in your state. Or another approach might be you want to focus on one pillar because of how those strategies are connected and make sure you hit that pillar extremely hard in depth in all ways to be able to make that significant difference. We're not telling you how you're going to be selecting those strategies, but rather what we're looking for is we're looking for you to tell us the story, for you to build that narrative of what's going to work so that at the end of this project, the end of 3 years, you can say, because of the work we did with Complete College America, our state or region and our institutions are in a different place than we began, both with what's happening on the ground, on the campuses, with the strategies being implemented, and the policies that support and elevate and scale this to all students, specifically focused on equity. And so when we say that, we mean taking that into account for how we design our strategy. So we're not looking for just the tide that lifts all boats, right? But we're saying what's going to make a difference for those students who've been historically excluded from education, from higher education, if we're going to make a difference. So we want you to do some of that deep thinking around the strategies and what's going to make the most sense for you. We've purposely made the application process doable. We want it to be reflective and we want you to be thoughtful in what you're doing, but we're not asking for information just to make an onerous application. But here's some thoughts to consider, particularly around the strategies. Are there things that are going on in your state right now or your region that could be enhanced by this PEP initiative, the Policy, Equity, and Practice project that we're talking about that's being fueled by Ascendium Education Group? So if there's things that are already partially in place, not already done, but that need that extra pep to be able to push it forward, that might be one thing that you consider. Or another consideration might be, what is the strategic plan for your state or system or region? And how could this enhance that? How does this fit with what you've decided are your strategic priorities? Not for the sake of saying, therefore we'll be selected for a grant opportunity, but rather this is something that we are fully committed to, and this will help us achieve those goals. As you heard me talk about a couple of different ways of looking at the strategies, and that was by no means exhaustive. We're looking for your creativity, but we're looking for what is that through line to connect multiple strategies to have the maximum benefit for students, for transforming the institutions, and for building that momentum, the movement across your whole state. We're looking for not just a random selection of strategies, but we're looking for that through line of how you're going to leverage those for real and sustained change during, and most importantly, beyond the time of this project. And finally, as part of Complete College America, you should be collecting and submitting your data. That's not just for submission's sake, while we certainly look at it to be able to tell your story as well as the national story. You should be looking at it to be able to find out what are the trends that are going on right now. Where are the action pieces? Where are the points of leverage? And so another consideration is when you look at your state or regional data currently, what does that tell you for your areas of focus, where you need to focus and where you see you can have the largest impact through the focus? So speaking of data, we know that currently there's some things we do really well with data. We're able to look at access, we're able to look at completion, albeit sometimes those completion metrics are limited by how that data is collected if it's first-time, full-time students. But we do an okay job at that. When we look at progression or efficiency or equity, we may or may not do a great job. And when it certainly comes to cost or post-college outcomes, right now we don't have all the tools. Well, as you know, as Alliance members, Complete College America has really been focused on shifting our data collection and our submission processes to the Post-Secondary Data Partnership, or the PDP. And the reason for that is the PDP collects lagging as well as leading indicators of those key performance indicators, and those are tied directly to our strategies. So being able to look at the credit accumulation rate, being able to look at completion ratios, looking at what really matters is that course completion of the Gateway Math or English course, not just how students are doing in remediation. And with the PDP, you're able to look at this through multiple lenses by having the dashboards that allow you to disaggregate in multiple ways, whether it's looking at how are Black male students doing specifically around completion of English and math gateway courses, or how are our Latina females doing when it comes to earning a credential of value. You're able to look at that data in different ways to be able to see what does that point to you and how does this connect now to the strategies. That's why this is a big area of focus, is we're going to be using data throughout this project, not just as a reporting mechanism, or as a mechanism to keep ourselves accountable and honest around the strategies that we need to focus on and the progress we're making. So as Nia mentioned in the introduction around our theory of change, it's all focused around policy, perspective, and practice. So how do we create those conditions at the state level, on the campus level, that we need for that change? You can't just go directly into that change. There has to be a case making that happens to be able to get people on board when we consider the change process. And then we have to engage in policy as well as the practice, the grass tops and the grassroots. And through that FIT model that I mentioned, and I won't go through each of these points, but you see here that Complete College America has a process that we will be going through during this grant to be able to connect the dots all the way through. We're going to be providing technical assistance. We're going to be providing convenings. We're going to be doing the things that we know are necessary to be able to move these strategies forward. And one of the questions that I'm sure people may be asking is, how will we be selecting? As you can tell, this is a co-creation process. We are not coming in and telling states, you will choose these specific strategies. We have a more exhaustive and connected list of strategies, but we're looking to you to say, what are your needs? And so first and foremost, we are looking for that commitment to student success. We know from past projects that policy is important, but you also need to have the right environment, and you need to have the right commitment from those policymakers, whether that's legislators at the state level, whether it's Board of Regents at a system level. But at the scale level, you need to have a commitment of policymakers who are willing to take a deep look and do an audit of current practices when it comes to policy, be able to look at those. And we know that there are politics involved, and policy doesn't happen overnight, but that commitment needs to be there to take that open look and to either develop new policies that address some of the gaps, or improve upon policies that perhaps you already have in existence, but be able to focus them on the need that's there. So that's one thing that we're looking for, is how committed are you as a state or region, as well as your institutions when it comes to policy, as well as change is hard. It takes time and it takes willpower to make those changes happen on a campus. And so we want to make sure that that commitment is there. So we want you to be able to show that, for you to show that to us. In terms of state and institution readiness, what are ways that you're already looking at equity? What are ways that you've already set goals or set a vision for what you're expecting from your institutions in your state to hold yourself accountable to create the necessary framework for students to succeed with equity in mind, looking at who's historically been excluded and how you're going to write that through the strategies that we've talked about. So what is the readiness? We know that there's a lot that can go into this, and different parts of the country are dealing with different issues. So the question is, when you select those strategies, will your state and will your institutions be ready over the course of the 3 years to commit the time that's necessary and the work that goes in between those convenings to actually put those in place? Now, if you notice, we're not setting a number of strategies because we want your thoughts to go into this as well. So for example, change process takes time. And when we're providing technical assistance and you're involving faculty, you're involving staff, you're involving leadership, that takes not only time, but there's a lot that goes with that if you're going to make that deep change. So thinking about what are the number of strategies that you can realistically implement, not at a superficial level, but at a really deep level to make a sizable difference for students. So that's something to be thinking about. And this is, of course, across 2 years and 4 years. We want this to be meaningful change around the sector of higher education. But we're looking for folks who are willing to engage. Now, one way that you should have been doing this already, during the summer, Complete College America sent out strengths assessment. Those were done at the state or regional level through the Alliance strengths assessment. We also sent out institutional strengths assessment. Now, we collect that for a variety of reasons, and we will be sharing some of our analysis back with all of our Alliance teams. But when we have large projects like this PEP initiative, one of the things that we're looking at is, how are you already showing your readiness? How have you already done that internal look of where you are with the strategies? That was part of the strengths assessment. So that's one of the reasons why we're going to be prioritizing states who've already completed the CCA strengths assessment, because you're showing the commitment to being part of an alliance and an active member so that we can see your readiness when these projects come up. And lastly, the data submission that goes with that as well. We will be prioritizing states and regions that are part of the PDP or post-secondary data partnership, or those who are submitting their data actively through Complete College America. Because data is going to be leading this effort, we need to make sure that that data is already in, not just for current, but being able to look at the trends over time. We're going to be doing a lot of professional development on the PDP, so we're certainly going to be prioritizing states, systems, regions who are involved with that. So some next steps. Our application is available on the Complete College America website. We also have it as a PDF if you'd like to preview the questions as you think about your submission. Those applications are due December 1st, so in just about 2 weeks. And then we are going to be notifying states and regions in January. My guess is the end of January if you've been selected. Then throughout the spring semester, we will work with those states to select the institutions that will be participating. So it does not need to be all of the institutions within your state. Every state or region is different. So you can have some that have a small number you can count on 2 hands and some that are literally in the scores. We want to make sure this is a doable project to work at scale with the full commitment and to be able to convene folks together. As you see, we will work with you, and it might look different each state, but we will be convening executive leadership, doing orientations as part of the FIT process for that. Data workshops, we need to get on that from the very beginning because you don't only collect data at the end, but you need to set that up from the beginning. Campus leadership meetings is part of that leadership process, as well as looking at the policy and strategies focus for identification. We're also going to be then, as you see throughout the following fall and spring and so on, we will be doing a number of convenings and institutes, including some of our summer policy and action institutes, technical assistance based off of the needs that you have at your state or region. Those may be in person, they may be remote, or a combination thereof. We're going to be engaging folks through that networking process that we talked about before through a new portal that we're going to be releasing soon. The data collection will continue throughout. We will have some accountability for those policies that need to be developed and passed, as well as the strategy adoption. Throughout this time, we will be getting people together to make sure that we are building that network and making sure that we are stronger because of it. So at this point, what I would like to do is I would like to pause to see if folks have questions. You can put the questions, if you have any, in the chat. You can also put them in the Q&A, and both Nia and I will be monitoring them.
While we're waiting for questions, I'll just offer a couple of things. So Brandon shared a lot of information around what we're looking for in this project. We do really believe that this is going to be a transformative project, transformational project with the states that we are partnering with. And we just to reiterate that we know that this may look different in different states because of your sizes, your institutional priorities, your system priorities, your culture, and the political leanings of your state. So we know all those things will influence the project. And I think what's really important to know is that we're in this to be able to partner with you wherever you are and figure out where you are, and then being able to identify a goal and move you toward the goal. So if anything you heard today, you're saying, well, I don't think we should apply because we haven't done this, or we don't have a strategic plan around this, or whatever that is, I would ask you to contact Brandon or myself first. So please do not self-select out. We want to know what your concerns are, and so that we can address them, discuss them, and see if there are concerns that we can't work through, because some of the things that may seem insurmountable, we might actually have a strategy to address those. So I think that's really, really important to share. And the other thing I'll say is when we look at a project like this, it's huge. Okay, so the goals are huge. The Ascendium is investing a lot in making sure that we reach some outcomes. And so we don't want to say that it's not going to be work, because it is going to be work. But the thing that I think is really that we're trying to be strategic about, Brandon and I are both former institutional practitioners. So we understand how these ideas come about and these initiatives come about, and then you're on the front line trying to figure out how do you fit this into your workflow. We get that, we've done it. And so we are very committed to figuring out how do these types of projects enhance the work that you're doing, and not just continue to add more things on. So it's not initiative fatigue. So we're committed to that. The thing is, we have to know what's going on. We have to have conversations, and we have to map out a plan and a strategy that works best for your institution, your system, your state. And so I'm saying that because I just want to acknowledge that there is effort and work that has to happen, but we're there. We'll have technical assistance and support for you, and we'll work with you as best we can to be able to mitigate as much as we can the additional lift. But the other thing is, it's like I tell my friends and my family all the time, it's like short-term sacrifice and long-term gain. So what we know is that there'll be points where it's maybe a heavy lift, but the outcome and the sustainable support that you'll receive to be able to move your needles around your priorities is going to be worth it over time. Like, we believe that. And so just something else to kind of think about as you're pondering, is this something else that I want to sign my team up for?
Nia, I'm really glad you brought up the point about priorities, and that we've all worked on campuses before, because that's hugely important in understanding how change happens, right? So when we want that deep change, we're really looking for you to be able to share with us, what is your priority within your state or within your region, right? If you notice, we were not asking for people to submit a plan for how they're going to take 18 strategies across 4 pillars and implement them all at scale, because it takes deep work. So we're looking for, what is that through line, and how are you going to pinpoint those so you can have that change? And I really think about this as such a classic example of what a state says, wow, here's what we could do when we could have that technical assistance, the professional development, the support from a national organization of Complete College America coming in to help us through the process that aligns with our goals, with how we want to do, and providing the resources for us to be able to achieve that. So we are really excited. I agree with Nia, please do not self-select out. We are expecting a competitive interest, just I will say, from what we've had so far. That excites us, because that lets us know that the Alliance is strong in that activity. But if you do have questions, I will put my email into the chat, which is bprotus@completecollege.org. Please reach out to me between now and December 1st, or Nia, she just put her information as well. I'm not seeing many more questions, so I'm just going to mention one other thing of additional opportunities. This is not related to the grant, but we always want to share items with our Alliance members, which is the Connecting Minority Communities pilot program, which is specifically for HBCUs, tribal colleges and universities, TCUs, and MSIs. And it's specifically around broadband and digital technology capabilities. And we want to be sure to be able to share this information. Again, we will be putting a copy of this recording on the website, and I believe we will be emailing out a link to it as well once we're able to download it. So I'll give one last call in case there's any questions at this point. If not, I would like to thank everyone for participating today. We are excited, to have you as an Alliance member. Let me just start there. The strength of CCA is in our Alliance. So when we're able to see how many people logged in today, we get excited. Second, we're excited for your enthusiasm and your interest in applying, and we can't wait to see your application and to be able to start to work with the selected states and institutions on this really wonderful and exciting project. Our PEP rallies, our PEP talks will be forthcoming as we move forward on this PEP initiative.